the Speak, episode 11. And when we rock the mic right.
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
If you've never seen the story behind how and why the What the Speak podcast got started, visit whatthespeak.com/speakbetter to watch the 90-second video. If you like what you see, send the link to someone you know. My guest today is Joe Pulizzi, the father of content marketing. Joe began using the term content marketing back in 2001 and founded the Content Marketing Institute. Now, if you don't know what content marketing is, don't worry, we talk about that at the beginning of our discussion. Joe is also one of the leading speakers in the world on this topic of content marketing and social media and has delivered hundreds of keynote presentations. This experience has given Joe lots of tips and tricks that he's going to share that are the very things you can start doing right now, today. So Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be talking a little bit content marketing and public speaking and whatever else you want to talk about.
All right. So they call you the godfather of content marketing, right?
It has been known in some circles.
Yeah, yes. In some circles. Well, I'm kind of thinking that, Joe, you're the samurai warrior of content marketing. How do you like that one?
I don't know. I mean, with the last name Pulizzi, Godfather seems to go over a little bit more naturally, but, whatever. As long as you're calling my name, I'm probably okay with it.
All right. So because of this area of expertise that you've developed in the domain of content marketing, you're speaking a lot. You're speaking roughly around 100 times a year, a combination of live events, web events. So this is something that you really know. I want to first, for the audience members who may not really know or understand what content marketing is specifically, can you give us a concise definition of what that is and maybe some examples of content marketing? Sure.
Yeah. Simply put, content marketing is about owning your own media versus renting your media. So it's really, it's I don't want to say it's the polar opposite of advertising, but if you look at, you have three buckets, you have paid, earned, and owned media. We're talking about owned media. It's all about creating valuable, relevant, compelling content on a consistent basis, similar to the way publishers have been doing for hundreds of years. But instead of saying, where are my customers at? And I'm going to place an ad around their content. We're saying, no, we're going to create the content. We're going to build that fantastic, epic content that people want to read and engage with on an ongoing basis. And part of that is about building an audience. It's very just like any publication that you read that has an audience, whether that's print circulation or email subscription, whatever the case is. It's really important that we want to build an owned audience, and then we want to see, once we own that audience, what can we do? Can we create better buyers out of it? Can we create better customers? Can we move those people toward a buying decision? Or can we create brand loyalists that want to talk about our brand that content will help us do? So really, in as simple definition is, we're talking about acting more like a publisher than we are about advertising our products and services.
Got it. I think I don't know if it was in one of your books or something that you guys put together, but I thought a really good way to explain it too is that essentially at the end of the day, it's about having a conversation with your prospective buyers without selling to them. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it's funny because when you ask, if I talk to marketers and they'll say, I'm doing a lot of content marketing. I said, well, tell me what you're doing. We do a lot of product feature reviews and we do a lot of, case studies about our product. And by the way, those are all good. But for the most part, we're talking about relevant content, which has nothing to do with our products and services. This is about focusing on the informational pain points of our customers, just like you would Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, even Huffington Post, for example, or Mashable. Those are really good examples on that side. So if we're looking on the brand side, what are we talking about? It's something like an American Express open forum where they're creating content every day that's solving small businesses, organizational, operational, financial issues, and they're not talking about American Express products. By the way, American Express Open Forum, that drives as many credit card signups as anything else they do, and they never talk about their product. So it's those types of things that really go. And so most of the content that brands create right now are about themselves, but for content marketing to work well, most of that content is not about us.
Awesome. Well, so let's segue now into this idea of content marketing. And let's talk about public speaking as a content marketing vehicle. And I know that you've said before that after your blog and after your books, that public speaking has had, a huge impact on your business. So I'd love to kind of glean your insights in how public speaking has been a content marketing vehicle that you've used.
Yeah, it's, number one, blog, book, speaking. Those are the three things. I mean, if you're trying to be an influencer in your industry, there's not one that comes first. They all sort of work together. And it's amazing, what you can see happen when let's say you want to be a public speaker, you probably, for the most part, if you want to get speaking invitations on a regular basis, you really have to make sure that you have a blog and a book. I mean, I blogged about this a lot, but if you don't have a book, you probably won't get a lot of speaking invitations, because sometimes that's the cutoff. Does the prospective speaker have a book? And then if that's not there, the second thing you go to is, well, what's their expertise area? Well, then you immediately go to the blog. Testimonials are great, those types of things, but the blog is sort of proof. The book gets you in the door, and then public speaking, that's where all the magic happens. That's where you have people that have spent their hard-earned money going to some event, and you are in front of them, and you have them for a half hour to an hour, and you can make a significant impact. So not only will they subscribe to your content from that moment on, but I can't remember the last speaking engagement I did where I can't trace it back to some kind of a sales event. It's just the nature of the beast to get going. So I would just say all three of those working in conjunction, but it's just amazing and a small business as well as influencers in large businesses.
Excellent. Well, I know you've also written a lot about your experiences as a public speaker and a lot of the opportunities that you have to share your message, and some of the tips that you've been able to incorporate into your presentations. And I'd love to see if we could maybe walk through a dozen of them and just have you add some color to each one of these.
Sure, be happy to. You want me to start with my favorite, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I've got a short list here that I put together, but I'd love to hear what's your favorite tip, one thing that you really do in your presentations that you feel has the most impact.
Oh boy, but where to start? Number one is sort of a mindset thing. You have to realize that this is first about entertainment. Absolutely, if you don't keep them entertained in some way, that information won't get through. Like with our event content marketing world, I tell the speakers over and over again, it's like if you want the information to cut through the clutter and really make an impact on the person, you better be entertaining. So that's why if you're thinking about tactics or tips, every 8 minutes, 10 minutes, you need a transition. You need to work a story in. You need to get a little bit of humanity in there, a little bit of authenticity. If you're just going 45 minutes through and you don't have entertaining stories and you're not telling a joke here or there and you're not walking around, and God forbid if you're looking at notes or behind a podium or something like that, you're in significant trouble. So the most important thing is be a human being. What do human beings do best? They tell stories. They like to tell jokes. They like to interact with the audience. That's probably the number one thing that I would suggest.
Great. Well, let's unpack some of that, because some of the things that you included in that rundown is some of the things I wanted to dig into. So
sure.
First, let's talk about kind of structurally. I know that you kind of advocate this 3-part structure where there's an introduction, the body of the presentation, and a closing. Can you just talk a little bit about why that's important?
It's all actually, Brian, it's all about repetition. You want to do 3 things. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them. I mean, it's basic storytelling. It's nothing revolutionary. When I used to teach public speaking at Penn State, and I used to tell the students, don't overcomplicate it. The best thing you can do, and actually Dan Pink, who's a great speaker, excellent author out there, he says the same thing. The number one key is repetition. So if you look at the 3 parts, start with the introduction, tell them a little bit about yourself, but really get them comfortable with where you're going to take them. then you take them there. You do that through lots of stories, lots of case studies, throw in some jokes here, and then when you're done, wrap it all up with another. You cannot repeat too much in a presentation. So a lot of people think, oh no, I already talked about that. That's okay. That means if you're let's say you have a 3-point speech or a 10-point speech, realistically, it's all about the same stuff. You're not gonna go through a thesis while you're doing a presentation. So tell them what you're gonna tell them, then you tell them what you told them.
Great. Okay, so repetition's important when you think about that structure. What about lists? I know you're a big advocate for creating, this list that you give or you deliver the information in. Can you share a little bit about why that's significant? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we got hung up a bit.
Okay, yeah, I just got you coming through. If you use numbers, I mean, look at blog posts. Look at the success of any blog post. If you look at numbers, people are more apt, at least at the present time, to click on this, to share that, because they know it's a finite time they need to spend with something. And also usually actionable. So it's like, hey, you're setting expectations for, okay, this is how long. I can get through 5 tips. I can get through 10 things or whatever the case is. And then you're also saying, hey, these are 10 different things. And when I go through, and usually I start presentations and I say, well, what's the key to giving a fantastic presentation? And I'll actually say this to the audience. And they'll say, oh, you have to be engaging, you have to be funny. I said, no, actually, you have to set low expectations is your most important thing. So I always say, like the Jack Palance character in City Slickers, he says, what's that key to life? It's this one thing. I always say, well, I want you to get one thing out of this presentation. I'm going to give you 5 things. I'm going to give you 10 things. But if you get one thing and you can take that back to the office and do something with it, then we've succeeded.
Great. Now, what about this idea of switching up your flow of the presentation? I know you talk about every 8 minutes kind of telling a story or doing some type of change that keeps the audience engaged. How do you do that?
The one thing you want to do, you want to basically digress from whatever you are focused on. I would actually pause. The best way to do it is pause and move to a different location in the seminar room or wherever you're at. Then everybody can sort of recollect their thoughts. You're getting on something different or you're making a transition, almost like you're switching chapters. That will get everybody to kind of reset themselves. If you've lost some people in the previous one, maybe it wasn't relevant for them, they'll come back. And then always do that with a story. It's great to get personal. Oh, I had this happened to me, or this happened to this person. Make it very, very personal. Make it just like you're talking to your neighbor about something that happened yesterday. Reset, and then when you're ready to go on to the next point, you can actually go back to where you were, but you really have to reset that audience every few minutes, and it's great to do that not only in body position, but in what you're talking about.
Cool. Well, something else that I think is really interesting in the tips that you give out is how to leverage some of the current technology. And the first thing being short links embedded in your presentation as a call to action or various calls to action. Can you share a little bit more on what that means and how you use it particularly?
I've talked to a lot of different speakers that have lots of calls to action throughout for signups. I don't sell as hard as that when I get into that. What I like to do is I'll say, okay, here's a research project we worked on. It's completely free. You can get access to it here. Here's the short link. And I'll go through a couple of slides like that. I keep the short link up so they can get access to it. I like to do 2 or 3 of those throughout the presentation because some of it's relevant to some of it's relevant to others. So if I can work on it from that capacity instead of saying at the end, here's the big call to action. I don't believe necessarily in the big call to action because then it gets a little salesy. And the last thing I want to come off as selling. I want to be pure education and information. So I like to sprinkle those bit.ly links. So I use, bit.ly is there's lots of short link providers. Bit.ly is what I tend to use. And then I can do one for each event and I can track who went to that link for that event. And that way what worked and what didn't, and then I can sort of test the different feedback mechanisms I have in presentations that way.
What about Twitter? I know one of the other things that you advocate for is creating or crafting tweetable messages to talk a little bit about what that means, and then again, like how you particularly do it, or maybe if you can give us an example.
Sure. So Jay Baer, who's the author of the book Utility, great speaker. He'll be keynoting at Content Marketing World as well this year. I saw him present. I talked to him about it. And the way we were talking about, the way he positioned it to me was, look, there are a lot of people that have access to Twitter, but they don't necessarily know what to say, but they want to share that they're engaged in something, that they're watching your presentation. So instead of having them figure out and get some major point, just put it right on the slide. Here's a tweetable message. The way Jay does it, and I've done it in some of my presentations, I put the little Twitter bird there, and I'll say tweet this, and actually tell them, give them a little call to action. Hey, here's a tweetable message. Like I'll say, I had this up forever. I'll say Red Bull is a media company that just happens to sell energy drinks. I've used that in a ton of presentations where people then tweet it, and then you see the tweets go out, and you might have 2 or 3 of those in a presentation. The other thing with Twitter that's critical, and I don't see enough people doing it, is actually putting your Twitter handle on every slide. Because in a lot of cases, it's mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and they'll say, oh, here's my Twitter handle, and then the rest of the presentation, it's not on there, and they can't find you. They don't know how to talk. You want to make sure to grow your own audience on Twitter. When they share something, they're sharing or giving you credit for it. Put it on every slide so they never have to guess or they never have to look up. Some of us have weird Twitter handles especially. So I would say the tweetable messages is fantastic, but really, really important is to get that Twitter handle on every slide.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a simple thing, but I think, it's easy to overlook, and being able to leverage just that particular aspect of social media technology can have tremendous implications in how it's shared and spread. Mm-hmm. So, well,
the other thing too, Brian, is when you're going to an event, make sure you find out what the hashtag is for the event. The best thing that it's worked for me is not necessarily, I mean, you can put the hashtag in your presentation, that's fine, so that people use that hashtag, but the best thing is use that hashtag the couple days before and the day of your presentation. So I just went to the Vocus conference. I think their hashtag was Demand 13 or something like that. And a couple hours before, hey, I'm excited to be at Demand 13. Catch me at 10:30 in conference room A. And you'll be surprised how many people that don't know exactly which one to go to of a breakout, but because they see your tweet and they're following the hashtag, they come to yours.
Great. Well, my next question for you on a tip that you've shared is kind of a fun one. And you've talked about really tuning in and paying attention to your speaking wardrobe. Now, how do you do it? I know that you've got this thing that you do, and I won't give it away. I want you to share it with the audience, but talk about that and why it has such a big impact.
I will not. It's with everything I do now. I don't even go out of the house without some kind of an orange shirt on. But what happened, when I started Content Marketing Institute, I started doing speaking events, and I started to wear an orange shirt just because our color was orange. And it was no reason, there was no purpose in that. And then I did a presentation in Brussels, Belgium, and they asked me to wear all black with a silver tie. And I said, that's fine. I said, you're paying for it. If you want me to wear that, that's fine. And then I had a number of people both there at the event in Brussels as well as on social media say, where's the orange? Their pictures were floating up. Where's your orange at? Where's your color? And I had no idea I had already branded myself with that color. And from that moment on, I go all out orange. I'll wear an orange shirt, orange socks, orange watch. Sometimes I'll break out the orange, can I say pimp suit, orange pimp suit? I'll bring that out, do that for our own event, Content Marketing World. I have an orange vest. I want to make sure when I walk into a room, people know it's me. I'm identified by that color orange. Another really good example is Mari Smith, who's a great social media expert. She uses turquoise as her color. She either wears it or has she's wearing something turquoise. I think it's a differentiator, and it doesn't have to be color necessarily. That's my color, my wardrobe is what I do, but you have to have something that differentiates you from every other speaker. Maybe it's a certain style that you have. Maybe you do magic, God forbid. I don't care what it is. It has to be something different, because if you're going to try to get a speaking gig, let's say it's a speaking gig that you want more than anything else, you're up against hundreds of other people. What makes you stand out? And that's what you want as a conference producer. You want somebody that's going to stand out, draw an audience, and be talked about. Well, a wardrobe, consistency, something wild and crazy, whatever the case is, it's always going to work for you. I would just say pick something that you can own and be consistent about it everywhere you go.
Awesome. Well, Joe, we've got just a couple minutes left, and I have actually a couple questions left. So the last one is, you talk about smiling, and it's something, again, that's very simple, but has a lot of weight to it when you do it. Can you talk a little bit about how you proactively go about making sure that you smile in your presentations?
Oh man, when you start off a presentation, the first thing you should do, and I always greet everyone with, how's everyone doing today? We doing good? We having fun? I'll get very animated about it, and I'll try to look in as best as you can, depending on how many people are there. Look at everyone, smile at them, get that human connection going. It's not something that I'm challenged with. I usually smile a lot anyways in presentations. I think I'm funny, so I laugh at my own jokes. I do that. But if you do that, you want to make sure that humanity comes across. Because I would say the majority of speakers I see are horrible. I mean, they're boring. They're salesy. They got 1,000 words on a slide. They're pitching too much. It's just hard for people to sit through it. You want them to enjoy it. The first thing you can do is let them know that, hey, we're just going to have a conversation here. We're just going to enjoy our time together. That's why I like to let them, I like to poke fun at myself as well, put some jokes on myself about what I'm wearing or the slides up there, or if I've got a rapport with the conference producer, I'll pick on them a little bit. We're all laugh. We're all human beings here. Once you can get them to laugh and let down their guard, like they're not being sold in any way, or this might actually be interesting, makes all the difference. The best way to do that is to set up in your presentation every 5 minutes at least to say, okay, stop here, smile, say, everyone with me? Are we good? Should I continue? Just get affirmation from the audience that everybody's on the same page.
Okay, so the last one I've got here is giving something away. What is the significance of this particular tip? And again, how do you use that?
Well, if what you want to do when you do any kind of speech is give them the kind of information that they think they would have to buy. Like they would really think, wow, this is like when I do my LinkedIn posts, I love seeing the comments when I'm writing those posts and somebody saying, wow, this is normally information that I would have to pay a consultant for. That's amazing. That's complete validation for what we're doing. You can do that in a lot of ways. You can do that through the content of your speech, or you could put a real valuable package together, like we talked about the calls to action and the short links. Put something so valuable and say, hey, I'm going to give you this that's going to help you, and I'm not going to charge you for it because you were here in this room. Or if you're looking for a little audience interaction, I like to give away. I have lots of magazines that I like to give away. I have lots of books that I like to give away. So I'll always go and start, hey, who can tell me who does this website? And the first person that says Procter & Gamble, I grab a book and I say, I'll sign this for you afterwards. That does two things. First, that person's like, wow, I got something for free. Yep. The second thing is it's a sales promotion because I'm letting everybody know that I got a book in my hand and maybe they would want to buy that. And the third thing is the next time I ask that question, I'm going to get more hands go up because I'm giving away free stuff. So I like to have at least 2, maybe 5 different things to give away just to keep people going. And then they actually start thinking of questions that they would want to ask instead of being at the end of the presentation and hearing crickets, which nobody wants. We actually want an engaging audience. So bring free stuff. I don't care if it's books, if it's magazines, if it's any kind of tchotchke, something that's fun. People always like getting free stuff. It's like have a little, we're having a carnival. We're having a little party. That's what you want to have with your speech. And it's not going to be a party unless you bring, party gifts and give those away.
Great. Well, Joe, I know we talked about you being the godfather of content marketing. I'm going to switch it up, and now I'm going to say you're the ninja of public speaking and content marketing, because you just gave us away some really great secrets, some great tips that all of us can incorporate into our presentation. So thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you, Brian.
Alrighty. If you liked what today's guest had to share in our discussion, you may want to grab an audio copy of their latest book for free by going to WTSaudiobook.com. That's WTSaudiobook.com.
All right, here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What to Speak. Be sure to visit whattospeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.